Welcome to the Music Subjective. Today I want to talk about music beginnings, primarily my music beginnings, how I got into music, the journey that music's taken me on, where it started, and how I got going in my love for music and eventually collecting music. So if you want to be bored, come and have a listen. You might even enjoy it. You never know. Let's see where it took me, shall we? Hello, my name's Phil. So today I want to talk about how I got into music. My first recollection was back in around about 69. It was a single that my sister had bought, and it was Herman's Hermits, Something Is Happening. And I started listening to this in about summer of 69. Bryan Adams, Eat Your Heart Out. Something's Happening, come out I believe in December 1968. And the track was actually arranged by John Paul Jones. So there is a link there to some of the future music that I will be listening to, and we'll get to that shortly. I used to play this song back to back on my dad's hi-fi, and it was my first memory of really getting into some kind of music. Just on a side note to that, I actually got to see Herman's Hermits only about 4 months ago, which was really great, and they played that song. So very nostalgic for me at the time. Following on from that, the first single that I ever owned, not sure I'll be sharing this, but hey ho, and that was The Wonderful Thing About Tiggers from Winnie the Pooh. Yes, laugh as you may, but it was the first single I ever owned. It was a present. That was around about 1971, I think, 1971, when I had this single, The Wonderful Thing About Tiggers. These Tiggers are wonderful things. But he never released an album, never done a tour, so I thought, not bothered with you anymore, but I'm not going to dwell on a Tigger song. Probably too much already. Let's move forward to 1974. In the summer of 1974, during the school holidays, I would listen to my brother's LPs on my dad's hi-fi. These LPs were namely Led Zeppelin 2 and Machine Head by Deep Purple. I suddenly found my music calling. I absolutely loved these two albums. I played the two albums back to back for almost 5 weeks for most days. Studied the covers, studied the lyrics. I was well and truly hooked. To this very day, Machine Head remains a firm favourite of mine. I love both albums, but the Deep Purple one, for some reason, always resonated more with me. Nothing against Led Zeppelin album, but of course, as my channel name suggests, music is subjective. So, on my birthday of the same year, 1974, one of my gifts was 24 Karat Purple, obviously by Deep Purple. This was my very first album of my own. I was elated. This was a single LP compilation which included studio tracks, also a couple of tracks from Made in Japan, but also a previously unreleased live version of Black Knight, which today remains one of my favourites. I still had no stereo to play it on, so I still had to use my dad's hi-fi. My dad was very precious about his hi-fi setup, which is very understandable, and I appreciate that very much myself today. I learned from an early age to appreciate good hi-fi, good listening equipment, and to care for my music media, again, which I still do very much today. My second album followed only a couple of months later, this time for Christmas, and this was another Deep Purple album made in Japan. I also now have my own record player. This again was a Christmas gift. My bedroom now become my music sanctuary. Early 1975 saw me buy my very first album with my own money. Once I've saved up enough pocket money, that was. My first album I ever bought was Tubular Bells by Oldfield. The album was released in 1973 and the first on Richard Branson's newly formed Virgin label. I jumped on the hype whilst the album graced the UK top 10 album charts between February 74 and May 1975, after becoming popular due to its use as the theme tune in the hit film The Exorcist. That, of course, took Mike Oldfield to his fame and started Richard Branson on his way to his fortune with the Virgin record label and subsequently his Virgin brands. The album has actually spent nearly 300 weeks in total in the UK charts, which I'm sure no modern album of this 21st century will probably ever replicate. Of course, I went on to buy other albums from then on, when I was able to afford them, that is. But this is about music first and music beginnings, so other albums can wait for another day. So 1975 saw the purchase of my first 7-inch single, and with Tigger now firmly pushed off the radar, I could move on to some proper music. Of course, considering it's 75, it's probably fairly easy to guess what single it was. If you know the timeline, of course it was Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen. Released in October 75, it became the Christmas #1. It was accompanied by a groundbreaking music video. It exceeded the normal expected song length of around about 3 minutes, where it clocked in at more like about 6 minutes. And it spent 9 weeks in the charts at this time, and then a further 4 weeks in the charts after Freddie died in 1991. Truly iconic song. It'll be another 3 years until my next first. This time it was the 12-inch single. In 1978, I purchased Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas. I bought it on a market store in Basildon, Essex in the UK. It's only the 7-inch version, just transferred to 12-inch, but I bought it nonetheless, and it was just a mere 99 pence. This, of course, led me to become a fan of Kansas. Fantastic band. Okay, let's move on to my first ever gig, which was the 2nd February 1979. A date I'll never forget, firmly imprinted in my brain. My first gig I will always remember. Tickets were organised by my friend's brother, who actually introduced us to the band. Several of us all travelled up to London to the Hammersmith Odeon, and we saw the Irish Celtic rock band Horslips. It was absolutely superb. I've had a love for the band ever since. It was in support of their 8th album, which was The Man Who Built America. It was a truly fantastic night, and sadly the only time I ever saw them live. I did have another opportunity later on in life, but that's a different story. A very good friend of mine, Mark Cunningham, he actually wrote their biography as he became friend to the band because he was involved in the music industry. And what was good about that is that 2 of the members of the band came to Mark's wedding, and I got to sit and chat with them, and what truly lovely, wonderful people. It was an absolute pleasure. So I may not have got to see them live again, but possibly next best thing, I've got to meet 2 of them, sit down and have a chat, and truly, truly wonderful people. So I started in 1979 not only with the music, buying a music collecting bug, I'd now moved on to live music and gigs. Music now has really started to shape my life and has continued to do so ever since. So that's my music first up until 1979. Anyway, really appreciate you watching. If you can like, subscribe, comment, you know how it goes. I'd really appreciate it. With that, as they say in the Italian Institute of Facial Hair, moustache. Thanks for watching. Bye.